Hey everybody, Dr. Dustin here again with Dr. Lindsay. We've got a very special guest with us today. Dr. Lindsay's going to sit in the middle today. This is a little different. This is
We're switching it up.
I'm just going to switch it up. But hope you guys enjoy. This is The Vital Wire. All right. Well, take it away. Introduce.
Well, we have Sarah Meyer here
Yep.
with Embrace, Live, Thrive. And you're going to talk a little bit about that. But first, we want to hear a little bit about you and your family. So why don't
Absolutely.
you share a little bit about your crazy family?
Fantastic. Okay. So I am a mom of 5. So it gets even crazier than that. I have an 8-year-old, a 7-year-old, a 6-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 1-year-old. So we stay very, very busy. My husband and I have been married for 16 years. I graduated with my doctorate in physical therapy in 2011 and worked full-time until we started having children, and then just really felt the pull once we started having kids to stay home. And it's kind of my journey through staying home and kind of letting go my career that I realized how much I struggled with depression and anxiety. And that is kind of who I am. What I'm doing now is kind of just my journey from that depth of depression and anxiety into what I call full life healthy living.
Where did you grow up?
So I grew up, I was born in the St. Louis area.
Okay.
And then my parents moved to Rolla, Missouri. So I kind of grew up in the Rolla, Missouri area.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm from Cuba, Missouri originally.
we know you.
Yeah, oh yeah, I know.
We know you.
I was like, yeah, that little tiny town between Rolla and Sullivan.
Absolutely. Yep, absolutely.
So you were from Rolla then when it was UMR, not S&T.
My husband graduated from UMR
Yes.
and refuses to refer to it as Missouri S&T.
I get it. Yep.
Yes, he graduated
Him and I
from
get
UMR.
along great.
Probably.
So what's a little bit of the background of kind of your upbringing? Like you're from Rolla. What was? Go through a little bit of that.
My parents moved to a small town intentionally to kind of slow our lives down a little bit, and made the decision to homeschool. So I was homeschooled K through 12, and didn't really have any experience in formal school until I went to college. So that was a little different, not hard, just different, different managing, different styles, a little more focused than homeschooling. And from there, I kind of grew up always knowing I wanted to be in the medical field. I always had this deep desire to want to help people, and I really fell into wanting to help people get back to physical activity, because that's something I've always been passionate about, is being active. And so through that journey, I'm like, oh, physical therapy, that's great. I can take injuries and help people get back to being active. But I was always very fascinated with the mental or the psychological component to pain and compliance. It's just a different ball game, especially when you start dealing with chronic pain or any sort of chronic issues. It's really a different brain process. And so treating it has to be different. It can't look like how we treat acute pain. And so understanding how people think, how people work, what contributes to compliance has always been something that I've been really fascinated with and has contributed to what I'm doing now.
Awesome.
Yeah,
That was a lot.
that was good.
That was so good.
That's exactly what we wanted to get down to, right? Is like, who are the people that we're having on?
Yeah.
And
Super
it
good.
led right into my next question of what does Embrace, Live, Thrive mean for you? What started that? What was the creation of that, kind of with your background that led you into this? I know you touched on your journey as a mom, but how you help other moms and other women.
Absolutely. So let's see here. I really began developing, I started with separation anxiety when I started having children. And it seemed kind of crazy that, you just need a break, but when you feel away from your children, it even feels worse than when you're with your children. So that was a big struggle for me to start with. But as I continued to have children, which you heard, I had a lot of children very quickly. I continued to develop worsening depression and anxiety. And it was after my third child, my oldest daughter, that I developed severe postpartum depression and began having suicidal ideations, and really just got to the point where I could manage basic care for my children, and that was about it. which contributed to marriage struggles because my husband didn't understand why I couldn't get anything done. I couldn't understand why I couldn't get anything done. And so through a series of what I like to call God moments, he really opened my eyes to what was going on with myself, what I was doing to my family. And I don't mean that to attack who I was or what I was. I was doing the best I could in that moment, but really realized that I can't care for my family if I don't care for myself first. And so through those series of God moments, he really led me down to this path of healthy living and really realizing that it has to be holistic. It has to be mind, body, and spirit. Without all of those components, you're never really living a healthy life or healing. And as I healed, I really started talking to other women about what I had experienced. And it is stunning how many women are like, oh yeah, I've struggled with depression too. And it's like, what? Why is no one talking about this? Yeah. And so that's really where my company, Embrace, Live, Thrive, was born. I want to teach women and educate women how to embrace life where they are and thrive. And that's done through a whole host of things that we can potentially get into a little bit later. But really, that's my passion, is to help women and mothers understand that we have to take care of ourselves for our families, not instead of our families. So no more mom guilt. Hear me, people.
Yes.
Stop with the mom guilt.
Yes.
Because if you're not taking care of yourself, you have nothing to give to anybody else.
Absolutely.
And I truly believe that the mother is the heart of the home. And if the heart of the home is ill, that extends out to the rest of the family as well. And so that's just really kind of the background and the basis of where I started and what I've become passionate to do.
Yeah, and I think there's so many women and men that can really identify with what that journey and feeling that level of overwhelmed, but yet at the same time crippled and not being able to do what you want to accomplish.
Absolutely.
Whether that's stuff around the house or if you have a career outside the house as well, you feel like you're failing on both fronts.
Oh, yeah.
So,
100%.
And then that separation from your children, you feel like you're there, but you're not really
Oh,
present with them. You're not enjoying
yeah.
that time with them.
Yeah.
And I know that we can really identify with what you said about holistic living. Like it has to be encompassing all
And I
of our
love what
health.
you're doing with all of this, and that you're willing to speak about it and willing to frontier this almost, especially over the past couple of years with as crazy as it's been. And we've seen a lot of things, like, I mean, you said suicide ideation and being able to admit that and talk about that, but that's happening more. And for you to, even if it's just on a woman front, because I mean, I can tell you, and not going to steal the show here, but I can, and this too, like men go through, this is a huge man. So for what you're pioneering for women, I think I'm also in the middle of discussing pioneering for the men. So I'm so grateful that you're doing this, because the thing of it is too, is it's a lot of people need to realize that, you're saying embrace and thrive, which is super good, because you're not where you want to be, but you're not where you're going to be.
Yeah.
And that's super, super important for a lot of people to realize and to have a resource. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love it.
I feel like, especially with the men too, when you're in that phase in postpartum and you're trying to do all the things, be there for the kids, men often feel kind of neglected because you're trying so hard just to focus and be alive yourself and take care of yourself, that relationship suffers, and they feel that too. And they feel like in some cases they're the one bringing the money in. They feel like all they are is just money, then support, and feel the weight of the family without any.
And it's cool that you're talking about this and coming through this so organically. And it's like, it's weird how God, it's not weird, it's very purposeful how God puts certain people even at this table. Because one of the things that we say all the time, and I think you're bringing out, is the whole "I wish I would have known" needs to stop.
Yeah.
And for you to take action in this is huge.
You can't change anything you don't know.
Yeah.
And to talk specifically about the husband side, the father side, it comes down to communication, and that's something I really like to break out when I talk about healthy living, is our social health. So social health has to include healthy communication with our spouses, but it also has to include healthy boundaries. So learning how to, when you're upset and overwhelmed, simply ask, how many husbands and fathers would be more willing to participate if they just knew
what you needed.
And that's not, again, that's not negating situations that are going on that could be heavier than that. But sometimes it just starts with a simple conversation and like, hey, this is where I'm really struggling. And opening that line of communication, it can take away resentment. It can take away overwhelm. It can take away, we come in with perceptions. Sometimes we come in with different perceptions. Like, I perceive this, I perceive it this way, that's a whole nother podcast. We can talk about
Yeah,
where perceptions
yeah,
came from.
yeah.
But when it comes down to the relationship and understanding parenting, it has to be a conversation, and it has to start. And sometimes it's a little uncomfortable, but we don't change if we don't step into that discomfort.
Right. Or know how to change that conversation. Because I will tell you, for some of the males that are going to be listening to this, that, you know, we're wired differently, right?
Yeah,
so sometimes
absolutely.
we don't really perceive. It's like, I don't get it. Like, I don't get why you're feeling this way. But at the same time, guys, it's like, if you're getting consistently that vibe, that feeling, take a step back and realize, okay, and open that line of conversation. My wife have gone through this. I'm much more on that side of the depressive, and surprisingly enough, maybe people know that, maybe people be surprised to hear that, but exactly what you've experienced, I can level with too. So from a guy's perspective, don't be like, I don't get it, we'll just get over it. Like, no, there's a conversation that needs to be had. And women, definitely be okay with like, honey, I need to talk to you. You need to hear me. Like I need to confide in you. I need you now.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I feel like going with that, there's different phases in your marriage and in your life. And being able to say, like, at this phase, I need this from you right now. It's not for forever. I just need this right now. And being open to those roles. Yeah. Being more fluid and not rigid in the household.
And it can be very easy when you're experiencing and walking through a difficult season, especially if your children are young. It's just an intense season of life.
As we both sit here and
we have
children.
1, 3, and 5.
Right.
So,
So it's just an intense, but being able to step back and realize, like, okay, this is only a season. This is only a stage. So yes, this particular stage is overwhelming and exhausting in this manner, but it isn't forever. So step back, take a breath, kick off that parasympathetic fight or flight, and just remember, like, okay, this is a tough space, but we're going to do it together, and we're going to walk forward, and we're going to all grow and learn.
I love that. Well, in your business and Embrace Live Thrive, what are some of the things that you do with women? Do you primarily work with women, or is it as a couple, or just for
primarily my goal is really mothers, because that is who I am, that is who I understand, that's who I can relate to, and my goal is to really help them. I might be jumping ahead a little bit, but I really think that mothers often struggle, and fathers, I'm sure, do this as well, struggle with identity. And I really feel that women take on the role of motherhood as their identity. And what happens when you take the role of motherhood on, when things go wrong, something bad happens, or a child potentially makes a choice you don't agree with, that becomes a personal attack on who you are, because that's your identity. So really helping women tease out what their identity is and understand that identity has to be based on something that is foundational and unchanging. It can't be based on roles that will inevitably change. We are broken people living in a broken world. They will change. So really my first anywhere I start is always on helping women understand identity, because I truly believe that once you get that figured out, that starts to drive passion, that starts to drive purpose, and that is when you're really going to start seeing fulfillment, finding joy, which again could be another whole conversation. But that's where I like to start is that identity portion, and then really understanding that a healthy life, if you look at all the things you have to change, is overwhelming.
Very.
It can be so overwhelming. So understanding that healthy living is one step at a time. It's where are you struggling the most? Where can we start to make changes? And it's really a snowball effect. Like once you start seeing, okay, I'm sleeping a little bit better, I'm eating a little bit better, it begins to snowball. And it's easier to add other things on when you start feeling the difference and seeing that, okay, my effort is paying off.
Momentum is real.
It is. It absolutely is. There are things I'm doing with my family, kind of shifting towards a low tox life. I wouldn't have been even able to contemplate 3 years ago.
Well, not even a Tesla goes 0 to 100 in 0 seconds, right? And I think that's exactly what you're saying, is because we talk about that all the time in our practice. People even get overwhelmed. It's like, here's our problem. Here's what we're giving you as the solution. And it's really just one thing. Your care plan is you come in here, you get chiropractic, it's neurological corrective. That's all you need to do, and we're going to get progress. And they get overwhelmed with that. And it's like, how long did this take to happen? Or how many things do you have to do? And they're like, oh man, it's been like 26 years. It's like, let's start with one.
Yeah.
You know,
Doesn't have to
I have
be
26 tasks to do it. Great. Let's start with one. 1% better every day.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
100% agree.
So what are some common stressors that you see? I know you were mentioning that moms taking on the identity of just moms. Is there other things that you see that are common when clients come to you?
Yeah. So another thing that I think we all struggle with is realistic expectations of ourselves, of our time. I tend to be a very outgoing, want to do all the things personality type. And this is something that has drives my husband, who's introverted, crazy forever. I say yes.
Does he
to
play
everything.
golf? I think I need to play golf.
He's learning golf. But I do all the things, and then I don't ever have time for myself. I don't ever have time to rest or relax or whatever. And so really having realistic expectations that, okay, like 8 things don't fit into 4 hours in the afternoon, you know, and stepping back and reflecting, okay, well, what are my most important goals? What are my most important objective? And what activities meet those goals and what don't? And what don't, for this season, have to be set aside. Now, I'm not good at it.
We're all growing in this.
I'm not saying I'm good at it, but I'm actually seeing the light. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, fine, I guess you have a point. You know, you can't say you're right, but I guess you have a point. And so really understanding realistic expectations on time, on energy, on health of yourself. As women, and again, men can do this too, we tend to be caregivers. And so we'll give all of ourselves, and then there's no space left
Bucket's
for
empty.
us.
Yep.
And so realistic expectations like, okay, I have to have time to rest in the evenings, or I have to have 6 or 7 hours of sleep, which I'm really bad about. But like
I have
getting
to
that
eat.
foundation.
I have to eat lunch myself,
Yes.
not just
Oh
feed
my
the
gosh.
children.
Yeah.
We're really bad at
Telling
this.
you,
Yeah.
so many moms are like, yeah, I haven't eaten all day. And I'm like, why?
Just throw
It's
some extra chicken
okay.
nuggets in there. You can eat those too.
Even if they're fussing, if they fuss for 5 minutes, please eat, because
Yeah.
you will feel so much better if you do. But realistic expectations, I think, is pretty significant. Boundaries, we kind of have been lacing that in and out of this conversation. It's okay to say no.
And it's a complete sentence.
That is one of my favorite things to tell people. You don't have
Did
to
I beat you
explain
to
it.
that? I'm
You
sorry.
did.
I'm sorry.
You absolutely did. Yeah, no, because, and this is a Brene Brown tenet, not everybody has to have an explanation. Now, some people earn the right to that explanation, but not everybody. And no is a complete sentence. And if it doesn't fit in your goals and what you're trying to accomplish for yourself and your family, no.
Which is why that identity conversation, the first thing you work with identity is like, you know, a lot of people say, what is your why? You read the book, like, or they'll say, what is your, and which is great. But I think you even saying identity, I think is even deeper than that.
It is.
Because how do I perceive? What do I want to perceive? What do I want to portray? How do I want to be? What is my, and then it's kind of like, what is my goal for my life? What is my identity? How do I want to go about this? And then it's why.
Yeah.
And then making the decisions and setting the boundaries. We taught Dr. Lindsay a pretty fun phrase over the past couple months since we've opened. What's that phrase when it's not no, but when somebody asks you to do something?
Oh, that doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
That doesn't work for me. I'm working on it. So I'm sorry if you've been one of those people that received that from me. I'm working on that. That doesn't work for me. It doesn't mean I don't want to do it. Doesn't mean we won't do it. It's just that doesn't work for me. You know?
Absolutely.
It's a really nice phrase of saying no, because that can't, you know, so you don't become that person that's trying to fit 3 or 4 or 5 things into one day, or rearranging your whole schedule to fit one thing that doesn't work. But because I try to do all the things.
Yeah.
You know, I feel like that's very a mom thing. We're trying to do all the things. Yeah. And it goes back to what you mentioned about how people perceive you a little bit too. Like you want to setting those expectations like you have in your head, or you think other people have in their head for you, of what you should be doing. Yes.
Yeah, don't.
It's in comparing to other people. I feel like there's a lot to be said about that whole identity with being a mom or a parent.
It goes even deeper than that. So we were created
New level unlocked
for connection, right? Guys, we're going real deep. Okay. So we were created for connection. We were created to belong. We were created to seek love. And again, we're broken people in a broken world. It has become mutated, if you will. And so we as individuals will feel like we have to do all of these things so we can belong, so we can be loved, so we can be accepted. And it's really understanding, again, perception. It absolutely is a perception, but going back not only to identity, but understanding worth. The fact that you are enough, those are what are going to give you the power to put up those boundaries, because you no longer need acceptance, approval, words of affirmation from other people, because you're getting it internally. Now, those are really easy words to say. It's much harder to live.
Right. Yeah, it's very, very much, I feel like 180 degrees backwards, especially now. And especially after that connection over the past couple of years has trying to been torn from us, and how many people that's affected. But it's so true. It's like, you know, the community, the connection, the love. And it's just like, what if we turn that around? It's like, because I have these people, I am able, or I get to, not I have to do all these things so I can earn people. It's like, no, it's the other way around.
Yep. And I mentioned to you before we even got started, we went to church on Sunday. And if you have littles, you know how hard that is. If you actually bring children into church, you're so doing all the things just to keep them happy so they're not causing a scene. And, you know, that perception, you're trying to be that family. And not the family with your child screaming about fruit snacks.
Man, I wish you were still breastfeeding right now.
And during the sermon, you know, as you're trying to pacify them, the one sentence I got out of it, my husband turned to me and he said, "Did you hear that? Write that down." And the pastor said, "You don't need to do all the things. You don't need to be all the things. You are not God." And I was like, okay, I'm gonna let that resonate for a moment. And then it was, here, eat a fruit snack. But and then I looked down the pew, and my sister-in-law is literally typing it into her notes section on her phone. Like, I don't need to do all the things. I'm like, oh, good, somebody wrote that down. But just that perception of we're trying to do and be all the things, and that's his role in our life. So, that's awesome, and I love that you're working with women and even some men, some couples on that. It's a process, but so when do people come to you? What is a good phase of life? When do you see them reaching out to you?
Now, hang on a second. Let me rephrase this a little bit. When do people come to you? When should people come to you? Two different things. When do you find them mostly coming to you?
When would you prefer them to be coming to you?
We both can have the same conversation from different angles.
Right. Absolutely. Really, women clients, when it's time to come to me, is when you really feel like you're struggling with who you are. When you are so lost that you don't even know who you are, you don't even know which way to go. Sometimes you may not even know which way is up. I know when I was at my deepest with depression, I didn't even know how to ask for help. I was so far down. And if that's where you are, we probably need some other resources as well. But really, that's where I encourage women, is when you're trying to understand identity, when you're working through where to even start sometimes with trauma. I think, and this kind of goes back to what women struggle with, we're so much about comparison. Well, my trauma is not as bad as their trauma, so therefore it's irrelevant. But here's the reality. If you're struggling with something, whether it was a bully in 5th grade, whether it was a teacher, whether it was whoever,
a parent,
absolutely,
a family member.
That's some of the deepest wounds are those. But it's something that's holding you back, or it's a voice that you hear saying a story over and over and over again. That's trauma that needs to be addressed. And really, that's what I want to help people understand, that it's okay to have trauma and experience it and walk through it. And not just pretend, well, that was in my childhood, so it doesn't matter. That was a long time ago. It absolutely matters, and it absolutely needs to be something that needs to be talked about. And then I also really like to talk to women about understanding healthy living and what are practical ways of incorporating that into our lives, especially in the season of motherhood. And it can be fatherhood as well, because it can feel like there's never time to do anything. So again, it goes back to realistic expectations, time boundaries, making yourself a priority, but really helping women walk through that and realize that it's okay to do some of these things is a huge passion of mine.
And I just want to say too, I almost want to like go down this road, and I'm going to refrain myself from doing this. But here's the thing too, and I can relate from a guy's perspective and we're even harder to overcome some of that once we get to that.
Yeah.
When men get there, believe me, it's not easy. So if you experience your husband, or if you're a guy watching this, your dad, whatever, or just, you don't have to be a dad, a guy, like, it is so important to like reach out. Like, and even me, I can relate. And if you want to put somebody in touch with me who's a male figure, because I get it, we're going to respond differently. So women too, like, if you're noticing this, like, let's build community. It's not like, oh, you need to call the doctor, or, you know, like, I don't care. Like, this might be a bad idea, but I'll meet you at the bar at Old Hickory and we can talk about it. Like, it's like, let's do that. We recently just lost somebody in the racing community, took his own life because he was at that. And I wasn't going, like, I was going to bring that up. I won't go any farther than that, but let's talk real. Like I said at the beginning of this is genuine, and this is a genuine podcast, and those things happen. And it's like, what can we do to be better? And moms in that scenario go through so much trying to be all the things, do all the things. And it's so important that no matter what side of the parental square you're on, there are resources, and just know that you don't have to know how to figure it out. Know that you're not going to be judged, and that we can work through it. And it's not that we want to give you all the answers and the self-help, and like, it's like, we're here to hear you. And if you're willing to work through it, let's work through it.
And I think there's a level of embarrassment or shame too.
Well,
like, people feel like they need to hide at a certain point.
It absolutely goes back to perceptions. So as a culture, we perceive men as having to be the strong ones, the providers, the ones that take care. And so when we are vulnerable and admit that we're struggling, that is perceived as weakness. When in reality, that's the strongest thing that you can do. When you can admit that you're struggling and you need help, that is a sign of strength and courage, not of weakness. And so that is a culture conversation that we have to have, is shifting this conversation from admitting asking for help as vulnerability, as weakness, as something that needs to be honored and supported. And really, men have the toughest.
I think vulnerability is probably one of the
that.
most underestimated qualities you can have, is vulnerability. Because if you want it, like, from a men's perspective, and I mean, women can take this on too. It's like, we're supposed to be the steel figures, and mothers in their own right are the steel figures. And what happens when steel bends? You know, how hard is that to reshape and get back? You can do it. Yes, you got to put in the work, but just know that you don't just deserve the recycle bin. Like, we can fix it.
Absolutely.
Well, awesome. Do you have anything you want to?
I don't know. I've actually loved this. I mean, this hits home for me. I love that you're doing this for women. I've loved that you own that. I think there's room. I don't know if you have a counterpart or resources for the male population. I think I'm considering kind of pioneering some of that. We've lost too many people this year close to me from the male realm. And I don't know if this is exactly where we envisioned this ongoing, but I think this was like a roller coaster of greatness. It was like fun. There were jokes, there was intensity, heartfelt. But I think, again, it's like, this is a genuine conversation, and where God leads it leads. So, I mean, I just love and appreciate what you're doing. You and I just met today. I've heard a lot about you through Dr. Lindsay. So I love the connection that we're all having. So, I mean, other than that, I just super appreciate what you're doing. And, you know, what else, I mean, what does it look like to start working with you, or how can we help you? What is it you want people to know? Really, a lot of things. So I'm going to start with one. I'm going to start with one or two, and then I'm going to leave it at that. We have to understand how to have conversations. And really, a lot of this isn't going to change until we start talking. Awareness and understanding that change happens when we stand up and take a stand and say, this isn't acceptable anymore. And so letting individuals struggle with mental health, and it's so isolating. It feels that shame that gets heaped on you by yourself. Doesn't even have to legitimately come from anybody else. We're so good at doing it to ourselves. Is really understanding how to build that shame resilience. And this is, again, Brene Brown, who I teasingly refer to as my prophetess. It's understanding vulnerability, empathy,
as a culture, we're struggling with empathy, trying to understand where other people are coming from, and self-compassion. At this point, if what you're telling yourself in your head is not something you're going to tell your friend, stop saying it to yourself. We have to give ourselves grace. We have to give ourselves compassion. That's the conversation that needs to start having, that when we heal, and let's look at this as a bigger picture. We're talking about mothers and fathers, but all of this we're parents. And who do our children learn from the most?
Right.
Children learn their most through observation.
Oh, yeah.
Okay? So you can tell them all the things, but if you're not demonstrating that, they're not going to learn it. And so what better to teach our children than how to take care of ourselves physically, mentally, socially. If we're struggling with communication in our marriage, it is brave and courageous to step out and go to counseling. Can we just stop the stigmatization of counseling, whether it's individual or marriage? At this point, if people tell me they go to counseling, I'm like, yes.
Yeah.
I think everyone should go to counseling, because this is what it does. It teaches you tools. It teaches you where to start. Sometimes it gives you that unbiased third party that can be like, oh, well, those are interesting points. Let's try and come together on those. And sometimes that's all you need. You just need that party that's detached from the situation, that can see both sides and help you guys calm some of those emotions. So all of that to say is I'm getting ready to launch that portion of my platform. There, it's going to be, you can book appointments and things all through my platform, and all of that can be found on my socials or my website, which are all at Embrace Live Thrive. So Embrace Live Thrive on Instagram and Facebook, and www.embracelivethrive.com.
Perfect.
Awesome.
Yep.
Yeah, we'll have all of that in comments and links, and we'll attach it, and we'll.
Yeah.
I think our work isn't done together as a collaboration effect, brand wise. I think especially after this, I feel like we're going to grow into something together that will, I hope, help. We'll know it will help a lot of people. So I'm excited that you're here.
Yeah.
Close it out.
Yeah. So thank you so much for being on our podcast. Like we said, Shani will link everything for you guys so you can reach out to Sarah and begin working with her before there's an issue.
Yeah.
Proactively.
Oh, man.
That would be great.
Preventative. That's a whole nother conversation.
Yes, absolutely.
You gonna say it?
No, this is yours. You
All right. Another episode of the Mile Wire. See ya.